In Tokyo, police are pursuing a criminal whose wanted posters are posted in locations. A man finds himself on a crowded street, accidentally takes girl hostage and threatens to shoot her. At this point, his chest begins to hurt and he falls to the ground where he quickly dies of a heart attack. The next day, Deputy Director of Foreign Affairs leaves his office and is surrounded by a group of reporters. Before he can scold her, also collapses and dies of a heart attack. Nearby, a congressman accused of murder is released due to lack of evidence, but dies of a heart attack as he too is surrounded by reporters. As days pass, more and more criminals begin suddenly dying of heart attacks all over the city, even inside their cells. As the police and the media realize this can't be a coincidence, everyone starts talking about the person behind this and calls him Kira, which is the Japanese pronunciation of the word killer. Some people are in favor of what Kira does because crime is going down, while others think no human has the right to play God like that. Some religious groups actually think it's God behind this, finally passing judgment against sinners. One night, a newscast informs that a guy has broken into a financial company and is holding the employees hostage. When Light sees the criminal's name and photo on television, he immediately takes out notepad and writes down the name. Just a few seconds later, the reporter reports that criminal # suddenly died of a heart attack. The next day at college, Light and his friend Shirori discuss Kira in the year. Shirori is against Kira's actions and believes in the law. He realizes that Light will help people more fairly if he becomes a lawyer. However, Light tells that he has lost faith in the law. A few weeks ago, he hacked into the police system and found that cases had been closed without the criminals being caught or punished. Didn't want to believe it, and one evening he went to a bar where he heard criminals talking about how they liked killing. They soon noticed Light staring at them, threatened him with a knife, and told that no one could say anything to them behind bars. Shirori is also dissatisfied with the story, but Light does not reveal the true ending. After leaving the bar, Light threw his law book into the trash heap, disgusted with the current state of the system. Nearby, he found a mysterious notebook with words "Death Note" on the cover. He took it home and read the first page, which said that the person whose name on the notebook was going to die. Light thought it was a joke, but when he saw a murderer on the loose in news, he wrote his name in a notepad just for fun. The next morning, he read the newspaper and was shocked to find that the criminal was dead. At first, he thought it was a coincidence, but later, as he was leaving, he saw the criminal from the bar and decided to try again. Light wrote the guy's name on the notebook while watching from across the road, and to his surprise, the guy suddenly fell and died from a heart attack. Now that he was sure the notebook was powerful, Light read the other rules. The notebook only worked if the writer could visualize the person's face in their mind, and if the cause of death wasn't specified within 40 seconds after writing the person's name, they die of a heart attack. Afterward, Light headed home, only to come across a terrifying creature that introduced himself as Ryuk. It turned out he was a Grim Reaper, and only people who touched the notebook could see him. He was the one who dropped the notebook for Light to find and wanted to see what a human could do with it, so Light was free to use it as much as he wanted. Hearing this, Light vowed to create a crime-free world with Death Note. For months later, the police are still investigating Kira but have no leads. One of the detectives involved is Soichiro, who is also Light's father. The cops are desperate for evidence, so they agree to work with L, a mysterious genius who communicates with them via a laptop controlled by his butler. L analyzed the data of all mysterious crimes around the world and concluded that L is in Japan. To prove this, he makes a plan with the police. Sometime later, Light watches an international episode on channel in which a detective swears he has enough evidence to catch Kira. His on-screen name is, so Light immediately writes it into the death note and the guy dies on TV. Suddenly, the L logo appears on the screen and his voice explains that it was all a trap. The dead man was just a criminal on death row and wasn't actually shown to the world. It was the number presented as intended to deceive Light, but in reality, it was only transmitted to Japan to confirm S location. L ends the broadcast promising to capture Light and give him a death sentence. Light wants to defend herself, but doesn't know L's real name or face and is therefore powerless. Ryuk explains to that his scything eyes can see people's names and when they died, which is why he collects souls. He can share this power with Light, but must pay half of his remaining lifespan, so Light rejects it. The next day, L presents his new calculations to the police, which show that the timing of the deaths fits perfectly with the college's schedule. meaning Kira is a student who does not kill during class. Since Light keeps hacking into the police system to keep up with their case, he quickly learns about their conclusions and remembers that the Notebook's rules state he can establish the time and cause of death. So he writes down a bunch of deaths and programs them to happen during the whole day. When L sees this, he can tell Kira is covering his tracks and concludes there is someone in the force leaking information. He has no choice but to start investigating all the cops and their families. A few days later, Light is taking a walk with Ryuk and notices someone is following him. Ryuk says that the same person has been following Light for 2 days already. He didn't say anything because he must stay neutral. Sometime later, Light and Shirori get on the bus and a man sits behind them. Light immediately confronts him, but the man acts as if he knows nothing. Just then, a madman boards the bus and takes passengers hostage. Light recognizes him as a wanted criminal who recently escaped from prison and wants to help, so he writes on a piece of paper that he will catch him. When the man behind him sees this, he immediately warns him of the danger and asks him to trust him because he is the FBI. So the man shows him his badge and Light sees that his name is Ray. When the criminal notices the boys talking, he approaches Light and grabs a piece of paper, which is a torn part of the death note. This allows the guy to see Ryuk, so he immediately panics and opens fire. The bullets don't hurt Ryuk and the criminal is even more scared, so he runs out of the bus but is hit by a car and dies instantly. Light is not surprised by this turn of events. He wrote all this in a notebook in order to kill the criminal and at the same time reveal Agent S' identity. Light now knows that the police are looking for Leak. He wants to kill Ray, but can't because he has become the prime suspect. So he must first collect the identities of all the FBI officers involved in the case. Sometime later, Ray says goodbye to his fiancée Naomi and abruptly abandons his plans for that day. When Naomi finds this suspicious, she follows him to room and gets on the subway with him. Meanwhile, Ray grabs an envelope someone left for him and finds a stack of papers and a radio. At that moment, Light contacts him from another train car and says in a distorted voice that he is Kira. When Ray demands proof, Light kills the man next to Ray, who is also a criminal. Light threatens to kill all passengers on the train if Ray doesn't do what he says. So Ray follows his orders. He accesses the police database on his laptop and looks for a list of FBI agents involved in the case. He then copies all the names onto pieces of paper and looks at their profile photos. All the FBI agents start dying at the same time, and after seeing Ryuk in the window, Ray gets off the train but also suffers a heart attack. Naomi rushes to him, but is too late. Light watches this from the train and smiles happily as he accepts the envelope. Discovers that the papers he gave Ray were pages of death certificates. Later, at police station, Soichiro tells the other police officers that Kira has started killing agents, so no one at police station is safe. All participants are now allowed to leave without penalty or conviction. Most of the team members immediately leave the room, with only a few officers left to help. Since things are getting serious the team demands to meet L in person. Their request is accepted and they soon visit the apartment, where they eventually meet L, who turns out to be very young. L has come to the conclusion that Kira can manipulate time and cause of death, but he also needs the victim's name, so he tells all to use fake names from now on. L looks at the CCTV footage from the subway station and notices that Ray was pointing at someone on the train before he died. He then tells the police that their families are suspects and will be monitored for a week. Meanwhile, it is revealed that Naomi also worked for the FBI and even for L under the number. She wants justice for Ray and begins to investigate herself, and Number eventually learns some details about the incident from the driver on the bus. She arouses S suspicions and confronts Light at college, but he denies knowing anything. Before leaves, Naomi admits that she gave him a fake name to prove Light's guilt. When Light gets home, he notices that the pins he taped to the door are on the floor, meaning someone was in his bedroom. He goes in and works on his homework, ignoring Ryuk, who is getting more irritable by the second. Later, as Light goes for a walk, he explains to Ryuk that his room is probably bugged. His theory is correct, and now L and the police are monitoring his room 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Nothing happens for the first few days. Eventually, a criminal dies in mysterious circumstances, and Soichiro thinks it's enough proof. But L points out Kira can manipulate the time of death, so they need to wait for the death of a recently caught criminal. A few days later, Light goes to his room after dinner with a bag of chips, which he eats while studying. That moment, the newscast talks about a case involving a new criminal who soon dies from a heart attack. Soichiro is delighted to see this because it proves his son is innocent, and L has no choice but to let them remove the cameras even if he is still suspicious. The next day, Ryuk confirms there aren't any bugs left, and Light explains how he did it. He hid a tiny TV and piece of the death note inside the bag of chips, then wrote with his hand inside the bag. Sometime later, Naomi calls Al and says she will provide the necessary evidence. Meanwhile, Light goes to art gallery for a date with Shiori and learns that Naomi has taken her hostage. An angry Naomi asks Light for a confession, but he continues to deny being Kira and begs for Shiori's life. In desperation, Naomi reveals his real name to see if he will kill her. Just then, the police arrive and Naomi is distracted, giving Shiori the opportunity to break free and run towards the light. Naomi fires her gun in a panic and accidentally shoots Shiori instead of Light. He runs towards her and Shiori kisses him before he dies. Feeling guilty, Naomi decides to escape alone with her gun and reunite with Rei. Afterwards, Ryuk asks Light about Shiori, only to notice that Light isn't sad at all and he's acting. It turns out this was part of his plan to clear his name. He discovered Naomi's name when was investigating Rei's engagement and found the church where the couple had a reservation. He then forced her to do everything she had done a minute ago, including accidentally firing a weapon and deleting herself. He also wrote that Shiori was nearby and was shot at the same time as, and since almost no one carries guns in Japan, the obituary would of course be associated with deaths. Even a Grim Reaper like Ryuk is disgusted by Light's coldness. Light hides his name and pretends to be very angry and wants to catch the culprit behind Shiori's death. Since Light has helped the police in the past, Soichiro agrees to let him help in this case too. Light is then introduced to L, who greets him while eating the same bag of chips Light used in his plan. Meanwhile, in the year, a celebrity named Misa is running away from a crazy colleague who wants everything from her for. Suddenly, the guy dies of a heart attack and Misa sees a suicide note on the floor. Don't forget to subscribe so you can watch more videos like this.